go ahead and kick it off. Hello, everyone. If you can all hear me, my name is Jacob Weisenbaker. I'm a program manager at the National Security Innovation Network. Today, we are working on the NSIN Grand Challenge for AI in support of the Air Force Research Laboratory with Dr. Jeffrey Hudak and Dr. Lee Ffrdc and NSIN's own Dan Madden. This challenge series is intended to challenge participants to develop a competent AI player for theater-scale multi-domain operations using a commercial gaming platform. You'll know that DARPA has done some work in the past with this, and this is not the first time that AI has gotten into the realm of video games, but NSIN and the Air Force are also looking to get involved as well. Some quick housekeeping rules. Today is a live AMA, so we'll do some initial questions with our panelists, and then we'll open it up to all the participants. You can put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom account, and we will answer them live. So we'll just go in order from top to bottom as you put them. You can, as you think of them, you can go ahead and put them in, and then we'll address them when we get to that section. Some relevant deadlines. Today, May 10th, is obviously the AMA with Afrl. May 17th, this coming Monday, next week, we're going to have a technical AMA with Matrix Games, asking how the AI can integrate with the video game software itself. So this is where you'll have your tech leads come and get to ask those nitty-gritty particular conversations about the video game and its interface. May 22nd is the registration deadline for getting a command license to be able to, for Afrl and NSIN to provide a number of command licenses to participant teams, so you don't have to do it yourself. So we're asking for you to go to the link in the Eventbrite and the NSIN webpage. I'll post the link at the end of this AMA where you can register again, and we'll get that done. On June 14th, we have the registration deadline to participate, even if you don't need a command modern operations video game license yourself, and you already have one through other means. June 14th is the registration deadline to participate. July 5th is when we're going to have our submission packets due. We'll be turning in the scores for the AI and the technical paper on how to use it, which will be evaluated by Afrl. And then July 26th, we'll announce the winners and the $100,000 prize. So introductions. Dr. Jeffrey Hudak is a senior computer scientist at the Air Force Research Laboratory, specializing in artificial intelligence and multi-agent systems. He leads research on self-organizing complex systems that can act autonomously, while maintaining coordinated global behavior with applications for planning, optimization, and distributed command and control. He has been recognized as an outstanding mentor by the Afrl Scholars Program and conducts research collaborations on the applications of artificial intelligence to scalable distributed systems. So we're very happy to have you here, Dr. Jeffrey Hudak. And then Dr. Lee Ffrdc is the Autonomy, Command and Control and Decision Support Core Technical Competency Portfolio Lead at Afrl. In this role, Dr. Ffrdc leads the strategy development and technical investments across government, industry, and academia for the Air Force Research Laboratory. Dr. Ffrdc oversees a portfolio spanning fundamental research and advanced prototyping with a focus on developing core Air Force competencies in the areas of complex adaptive C2 systems, complex effects analysis, and machine intelligence. Prior to serving as the CTC lead, Dr. Ffrdc served as a principal researcher for the Complex Networks and Information Research Group at the Information Directorate at Afrl, where he led research and development of the new data-driven techniques for the efficient processing and analysis of complex information spanning a diverse set of traditional and non-traditional sources. In this role, Dr. Ffrdc led multiple efforts spanning fundamental and applied research, where he fostered extensive collaborations with multiple leading academic researchers to identify, develop, and fast-track cutting-edge emerging research with DAF applications. His research interests include statistical techniques for concise modeling and tracking of complex dynamic data, machine learning, including data-efficient and interactive learning, information inferences under sparse and incomplete measurements, and active sampling techniques. So we're both thrilled to have you both here today. And of course, the one and only Dan Madden, the Regional Director for our Mid-Atlantic region and all things New York City. We're also honored to have you here today. So before we get this kicked off with questions, I know that Dr. Hudak had a short video for us to explain the integration of AI into the video game space and kind of set the tone for what we're wanting to do today. So if you'd like to share that with us, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the reason I wanted to share this is because for me, this was really, in my mind, a watershed moment for AI and what it could do. for complex operations. So it's a 2-minute video, but I try to make it as concise to exactly the point where people went, oh my, this is going to be a disruptive change. So take the risk of running a video.
Now, this army of mana is very powerful, and the Immortals will always take care of Stalkers. But if Alpha Star would be able to perhaps buy some more time for itself, there is a chance that, 20 Zealots can show up, and then 20 Zealots can surround his army, because Alpha Star is a base ahead.
Yeah, now these trades, though, seem to be going extremely well for mana. It's like we keep seeing Alpha Star do that trick that you're talking about, hit the barriers on the Immortals and then blink away. Not that much damage on these Stalkers. I feel like most pros would have lost all these Stalkers by now.
Multiple groups of Stalkers being controlled here as well. Look at the Oracle, there are Stalkers everywhere. I think at this point, Mana is also wondering, okay, what am I going up against? Because this is, not even the best Protoss players can often pull off movement like this.
You're really quite right about that.
All the War Prism.
Oh, that was a great pickoff right there. And getting the Disruptor as well. Oh my gosh, Alpha Star with the pure Stalker strategy.
This is insane control, though. Multiple armies being controlled. Oh, the Immortals went down. And now it's just a couple of Zealots, and obviously Stalkers are fat. Well, there are still a couple of Immortals on the north side, but it's incredibly difficult to do this in a game of Stalker Field, where you micro units on the south side of your screen, but at the same time, you also have to do it on the north side.
And you know what's really kind of shocking about this is we went over the APM, the actions per minute, and it's not really that high. It's an acceptable pro level of speed coming out of Alpha Star.
Phenomenal unit control. This is not something we see very often. The Stalkers coming in from multiple angles as well. A forward link at this point, Alpha Star. Yeah, this is pretty insane Stalker play then.
That is just unbelievable. Like having Mana has made so many Immortals this game, I can't even count how high. And the fact that it has been defeated by literally pure Stalker, the unit that the Immortal most counters, it's so surprising. And GG is called by Mana there.
All right, so thank you. So yeah, I think for me, what's really critical there was that moment of surprise. You have professional announcers, a top-tier professional player, and clearly the machine found ways to be better and within the bounds of the environment itself. So really, for me, that's what's inspired me to think of how can we do the same with AI, and hopefully it's inspired some of you as well.
Excellent, excellent. I remember when that came out, and with OK Go, whenever the OK Go challenge lost to the AI, there's no hope for us yet. So to start us off, I've got a couple questions to start us off, and then we'll open it up to the general audience. So Dr. Ffrdc, what is your vision for this challenge, and what, beyond what he just showed us with StarCraft, what is your specific vision for this challenge, and what are you hoping that we're going to accomplish here? Like, are we also going to make a StarCraft video game and go pro, or we want to take this a different direction?
Well, as much as I'd like to say we can make some video games, I think it's a slightly different vision. I think what the Air Force is really interested in is pushing the not only the kind of the theoretical state of the art in what AI can do in terms of these planning for planning, but also now to start beginning to look at some of the pragmatics of how, not just in theory but in practice, can we build these AI agents and show how they can be useful in mastering the complexity of operations that the Department of Air Force has to get after. So while StarCraft, I think from the gaming industry, really took everyone aback. I think the AI folks are going, oh, okay, the researchers are looking at and going, well, what is possible? And so we'd like, through this vision, through this challenge, to start that kind of series of milestones and challenges to understand, well, what's possible for AI when it comes to Department of Air Force and planning systems. What can we push, and how far can we push that envelope? And we think this challenge and this partnership is really the first of its kind from the kind of planning perspective and strategy perspective with respect to kind of an operationally relevant need.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I agree completely. So and this is open to both of you, what would be the longer term vision for this? So we complete this challenge, we build an AI that can play command modern operations, and it just wipes the floor with all of our Army and Air Force planners, and like nobody can beat it. Like, so what's the step after that?
I think it opens, and I go first, Jeff. I think it opens the door for us to think about the true role of AI when we think about planning. You know, if you look at just one of the missions of the Air Force was humanitarian. You know, the challenges there is how do you do it at scale? How do you move quickly to uncertain environments? And how do you help the folks as quickly as possible? And if you look at some of the challenges we face, from organizational of large organizations to movement to logistics, that is really, really hard task for humans. And so how do you look at, hopefully through some breakthroughs of AI through this challenge, how do we look at bringing AI to kind of that large scale, massive kind of planning setting that the Air Force and other organizations need to go after? And so we really hope this starts a conversation and starts focusing all those good teams and smarts who love to play the games and are developing AI for StarCraft and other games to start thinking about it from a kind of operations planning perspective.
Yeah, and I think as Lee really hit on, I think AI is not only an inherent part of the future force, it's already a part of the force now. It's just doing very small tasks. It's doing ground collision avoidance. It's doing very narrow focused planning tasks. So I think it's an inevitable expansion of the role of AI. But at the same time, we have to navigate through that. There's an important concept that always comes up, which is trust. And how do we build human trust in these AI systems? And how can they understand their strengths? And how can they use their strengths? And how can they take responsibility as a commander or junior commander when something goes wrong and the AI makes the incorrect decision? And so that human machine teaming is going to be critical, especially as we think about expanding that scope of what AI is and where it can actually help us to do larger scale operations.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, what would a successful submission look like here? What are the bounds of expectations? I mean, we want to push the envelope, obviously do as much as we can given the time that we have, but what does a successful application look like? What are those markers that we're going to be looking for when we do the evaluation at the end?
Yeah, I think for a couple here, sorry, Jeff, we'll swap next time. For a couple, I think we're really looking as a laboratory to start is that innovative approach. Looking for folks to take a different look. You know, get your ideas out there and proposed as part of that written package. Our goal here is to both set a baseline, right? We said this is our first of a kind challenge. So our hope is through the scenarios that we're going to release and develop that we get an understanding of what the state of the art is and state of the practice is. But our other goal, I think, is to really push the envelope. And we hope through this challenge that we can put out some very complicated, we think complicated scenarios and see how far we can get as a team in terms of the participants and kind of pressing the state of the art and opening areas of limitations and gaps and help us focus on what we need to solve next from a research perspective. And so I think those are some of the traits that we're looking for in the evaluation.
Yeah, and I think our job at the Air Force Research Lab and with this challenge is about placing bets. We don't always know what success is going to look like. We try to forecast and we try to place those bets on the things that we think have potential. I mean, if somebody told me there would be this thing called Twitter where someone could put 128 characters in it, it would blast out to a bunch of people, and holy cow, that would be the transformative thing that completely changed culture and how we think about our meme-driven economy as it exists now, it would have sounded ridiculous. And so I think similarly, this is what this is about. It's about placing those bets and saying, hey, show us what you got. Show us how you could solve this problem. We know it's difficult. We know there's challenges here. So we're happy to really work with all of you to discover, as Lee said, discover those gaps, those challenges, and also, discover where the power is. I think innovation is not about ideas; it's about people and people who can get things done. And so, we're really excited to get out there and meet new people we already know, but really help to drive that innovation.
So we'd encourage all the participants of this, even if it's not a fully formed egg at the end of this, like to still send us what you got. Like if there's still like a one component piece that the AI is incredible at, like send it to us. Let us evaluate it. Like don't, just because it's not a fully functional final product, please don't let that keep you from participating. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to open it up to the Q&A section. And again, if you do have questions you'd like for the panel to answer, please put those into the Q&A section. If you put it in the chat, I might be able to catch it, but I promise you I'll catch it if it's in the Q&A section. So starting with the first question in it, are the challenges put forth open to non-US companies? There are Canadian companies that'd be very interested in participating. So from an AFRL perspective, do we need to limit this to domestic companies, or can we open this up to allies and overseas operators?
I can jump in if you guys like. That'd be helpful. Okay. So as of right now, this is limited to U.S. companies, but we've already had such incredible interest from foreign partners in countries that we have strong security relationships with, that I think it's clearly important for us to figure this out. So what I would ask is that that you go ahead and register anyway right now, and just note that what country that you're originating from, or that your team's originating from, and then within this week, I will get back to you with a sharper answer. Right now, we're working through this with our GC to see whether or not there's a mechanism that we can use to include our foreign partners in this challenge. Thank you.
Dan, I believe I have another question for you as well. Will the IP of the agent lie in the company that implemented it, or will it be owned by NSIN?
Yeah, so definitely not NSIN. So right now if you're familiar with Small Business Innovation Research Awards, SBIRs or STTRs, we're trying to use basically the same IP rules that govern the Air Force AFWERX SBIR submission. So it's basically like government use rights. So the government, the way that we're structuring this, the government, in this case, really the Air Force Research Lab Information Directorate, will get to use the algorithm, modify the algorithm, use the data in whatever way they see fit, but they're not going to be able to pass it on to third parties outside of government. You will still have full use and rights to both the data and to the algorithm. If you have commercial applications for it, you're going to be free to go and pursue that. Constrained by the standard ITAR constraints. Those are the constraints on the regulatory constraints that are backed by statute governing the sale of weapons overseas. Whether or not you participate in this challenge, anything that you develop is still going to be governed by ITAR. That's just a thing that covers everything, every product that gets developed. I don't see any reason at all to think that anything that gets developed based on this video game platform, I don't see any reason to think that would actually end up being constrained by ITAR as a practical matter. Thanks.
Agreed. Okay, next question then. Will AFRL provide any IT infrastructure for the game, or just the licenses themselves?
So yeah, we will only be providing licenses. This is something we've been talking through about IT infrastructure and training of models in some cases. And so at least for this initial challenge, yeah, we will not be providing any IT infrastructure.
Great.
I guess one thing I'll put out there is if your particular organization is experiencing that as a hard constraint, please contact me, and we'll see whether or not we can figure out a way to get you partnered with somebody that can help you. For these kinds of challenges, there's a lot of folks out there that typically like to be helpful, and we can see whether or not there's going to be a good match for you. I'll put my email into chat.
Excellent. So next question then, will the agents plan the operations, or do they just need to be able to execute them?
Well, we're only really evaluating on execution. And so if planning is a valuable component of your approach and it helps you to execute better, then I'm all for it. And so once again, I think this is about we're looking for innovative ways to solve a hard problem. And so we're excited to see what you think the correct approach is.
Hey, Jeff, just to clarify, just because I think that the author of that question may have meant a couple of different things there. So as a for instance, Jeff, would you find it a good submission if someone had a human player doing all the planning for a move, let's say, and then the AI agent was essentially executing it at a much greater rate than the human player could have?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd want to discuss the nature of that relationship. Yeah, I'm not quite clear on the distinction. There are going to be randomized elements to the scenarios, and so in some cases you won't really have as a human a whole lot of information up front to do some of that planning. So yeah, we encourage you to submit your thoughts on that if you think that's because as I said, that there is this idea of human machine collaboration that we have to think about going forward. So yeah, don't let that as a constraint make you hesitate to submit, and that's something we can discuss.
Very good. Do we have a rough estimate of how many licenses will be distributed, and then the process by which we'll choose which of those teams are able to get the licenses? And for the teams that are not chosen for licenses, is there a way that they could just go and buy the professional license themselves if need be?
Yeah, sure. So the rough estimate, the Afrl is planning on securing around 6 or so professional licenses. It's the Command Pro licenses. There is in your registration form on the website, there is a few short answer or paragraph style answer questions to elicit how you will use the license, kind of the novelty behind your approach, to give us some insight, and so and also need. And so we'll look at those responses to best allocate the limited licenses that we do have. Now, in terms of acquiring others, Command Pro is available to be purchased directly. There's also a potential teaming aspect if you know others, other participants or other groups who may already have a license. But from a license perspective, we're targeting around 6 or so based on the application through the registration form.
Makes good sense. Makes good sense. So an interesting question. And how do you think game theory could help with these particular scenarios that are coming forward? Is this something that you guys would focus on, or would you say that to go a different direction?
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly potential as far as the adversaries' priorities and comparing them against your own priorities and expectations on how those will interact. But yeah, most certainly I would imagine it has to be hybridized with something a little finer grained if you're going to be doing actual actions on individual platforms.
So there's a couple questions along this similar theme here, so we'll try to wrap them all into one. For the training scenarios, we're going to have 4 scenarios that are provided beforehand, and then a 5th one that will run after the submissions. Can you give us a kind of a preview of the 4 scenarios that will be offered beforehand? Again, if you have specifics, it's more than fine, but kind of broad strokes of what we'll be testing their AI against, or be asking them to test their AI against.
Yeah. So yeah, so I can quickly go through them. So the idea of having the 4 scenarios is, one, to provide kind of a set of increasing complexity so folks can get used to just the game mechanics. So the first scenario, I think it's called Wooden Leg, a variant of it. But it's just to test out your mechanics, test out your API, your Lua, interfaces, and to do very basic things like, refueling and strike. Then the subsequent scenario is more air-to-air, and then after that is even a little more complex, introducing concepts like radar and other environmental conditions. So the idea is we'll have a kind of a few scenarios of increasing complexity by making it more and more asymmetric across those three. So you can either train or build your expert system or game theoretical approach around that. And then the holdout one would be one I think we're currently thinking about either a combination of all of those. So really push the limit on complexity. And we're still working through that in terms of evaluation. But we believe we'll also be evaluating across the three scenarios that we would release as well. So increasing complexity, we're trying to get them out in the next few weeks before the 14th, so that people can start getting their hands on them and start exercising their agents or their development platform over those scenarios.
So Jacob, I think it would be good to take this moment to call out our surprise guest, Erin Cherry, and let her introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Erin Cherry. I work at Northrop Grumman, and my team, they're also dialed in here as well. I think they're also showing up as Erin Cherry. But we've been working with Command for the last year on the DARPA Game Breaker program. And I believe we're excited to be able to potentially work with some of you on this competition.
So Northrop Grumman is probably an example of the kind of organization that you could look at, explore developing a credo or pursuing a mentor protege program. That's not to say that they're the right one or particularly endorse them. It's just they've been working in the space and they're a good example of the kinds of industry partners that are interested in this space. I do want to, because it's come up a couple of times, I do want to call out one other issue. So Game Breaker, Jeff, maybe you could explain the difference between the DARPA Game Breaker effort and what you're trying to get after here.
Yeah, so DARPA Game Breaker is actually a very cool program. They're really looking at how the mechanics of a game itself could be changed to make it unbalanced. And so, yeah, for example, they were looking at StarCraft 2 and how could you change unit mechanics that would make it unfair for the other team. And so from our perspective, we're much more focused on how to quickly build AI that can actually play the team and be in control of the team. So, so yeah, I think there's a significant difference there, but it's, I think, a growing community in digital platforms that we can use as a proxy for thinking about larger problems that are of interest to the Department of Defense.
So I just want the audience to appreciate that. If at this point, if they also have questions for this particular industry partner, Northrop Grumman, about their experience with working with Command or these kinds of challenges, feel free to include them in your questions. Just when you type it into the Q&A, highlight that it's for them. Thank you. Jacob, I'd love to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, for the next question, how in particular, excuse me, is this tied into the SBIR topic? Like what's the connection between this event and the SBIR topic?
Okay, I'll reassert myself here.
Why you're here?
It's a delicate relationship. So right now, within the Air Force AFWERX focus areas, there is included this same topic. The relationship between the Air Force AFWERX SBIRs and the focus areas is this. There's not a direct relationship, but essentially, if you apply for an AFWERX Phase 1 SBIR, you can then, that essentially gives you a license to hunt. Okay, and by that I mean, in order to move on to the next phase of Phase 2, so Phase 1 I think is typically around 50K, Phase 2 is going to be 750K. For a startup, that can be a really very meaningful sum of money. That would be a very meaningful sum of money for me. In order to get to that Phase 2, typically you need to get a memorandum of understanding from an Air Force organization. The Air Force AFWERX focus areas, which includes this topic, essentially comes along with points of contact who are interested in exploring memorandums of understanding. So those are folks that might be interested in supporting a performer, a startup, a small business, university, in pursuit of a phase 2. There's no guarantee that they're going to end up supporting somebody, but at least that's an important sort of step forward in your customer discovery process. In terms of the relationship between this challenge and the phase 2, if you've already won a phase 1, or if in the an SBIR phase 1 or an STTR phase 1, and you're eligible for a phase 2, then the Afrl has committed to being to considering the finalists from this challenge, or the top performers have the most interesting tech, supporting them with a memorandum of understanding in support of their SBIR proposal for a phase 2. If you haven't won a phase 1, then you end up being a finalist, there's nothing to keep you from going after a phase 1, and that's having the conversation about whether or not Afrl support for a phase 2 proposal would be appropriate. Lee and Jeff, please correct me if you feel like I've misspoken.
Nope, I think you hit it on the head. I think, once again, it's really about bringing together the talent for us to understand where that potential lies. And this is the first of many, I think, interesting, maybe they won't all be challenges like this, but I firmly believe this is just the beginning. So for us, it's really about finding those that have that talent and helping to foster that. And once again, that's the great thing about the SBIR program is that it's all about protection of your intellectual property, which is really, we're not here to take what you're doing and run with it. We want to work with you on this.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm trying to find some of the more important questions in the chat. Is this a single or multiple award challenge for the 100K? This will be, I can answer that one. This will be a single award for the 100K. It will not be broke up into smaller ones. It'll be winner takes all. For submitting the final deliverables, are you looking for a white paper or a prototype? I believe we're looking for an actionable prototype. And this ties into to another question that was there, which would be, where was it? It was near the bottom. So as I understand, the challenge consists in uploading the algorithm for the agent, while the training part of the algorithm will be done earlier by each team. Is that correct?
So yeah, that is correct. And I think that's one of the big parts of the challenge is because of the randomized nature of the scenarios. You'll need to ensure that you're not overfit to a single random instance. And so yes, you'll be submitting your algorithm, and then we'll have another process for the evaluating of the scoring. What we don't want to have is on the back end us having to get your algorithm installed on our machines, and that raises, I think, a number of challenges. But hopefully in the technical AMA next week, we can provide a little more detail on that.
Okay. Does the AI agent need to parse a mission briefing beforehand in order to understand the objectives of the scenario?
Yep, I think that is also a very good question. We've been talking about how to present the objectives, because certainly having machine readable objectives will be important for a machine to actually, if it's training, to actually maximize those objectives. So yeah, I don't have a perfect answer on that. I think that's one of the things that one of the purposes of this challenge is to start to work through. Yeah, these are the technical gaps that are starting to emerge and are already bringing value. So so yeah, I can't say I have a good answer, but it is something we're trying to make sure we have a good answer on soon.
Okay. This also might be, I apologize in advance if this is a question better situated for next week, but if a participant team does not get a professional license, is it possible to implement the agents in the commercial version, like say the ones you could buy from Steam or something like that? Or do you have to have the professional license to play ball here?
It is actually possible to do it in the commercial version. There are some subtleties with the Lua API and ability to connect to it with external sockets that will limit some of the functionality that you'll have. So yeah, once again, this is a challenge that of working with command as it exists now. But once again, I think one of the tech gaps that we're working through. Frankly, these are the types of constraints that we expect to see interfacing with actual real Department of Defense systems. So navigating these constraints will be, for us, an important output of this competition.
Okay, very good. So next question, is there any way for research labs, example FFRDCs, to get involved into this challenge without competing for the prize money?
Yeah, I mean, we frankly, we encourage anybody who wants to continue this conversation and is interested in the technology to do so. And yeah, as you said, those who aren't qualified to win the prize will not be in that sort of that version of the leaderboard. So yeah, those who are qualified, those are the ones we'll select from. So yeah, please feel free, reach out, and like I said, this will be a long-running technical and frankly operational conversation going into the future.
Okay.
I was going to just add, part of this is to build that community focused around this being the first challenge. So very much appreciate FFRDC insight, participation in the sense that you have an idea or an approach as part of this challenge, but also going forward. And I think that's the same for others as well. Over.
Okay. Will there be reach back capability to Matrix during this challenge?
I think that would probably be a better question for Matrix. Yeah, this is part of why we're purchasing the licenses so that we can provide to the performers. This was very much a NSIN and Afrl idea, and we went to Matrix and said, hey, by the way, we're going to be doing a challenge using your software. So this is also part of that evolution. I think there's a lot of potential here, and I will most certainly leave it to Matrix to decide the nature of those interactions. Yeah,
and we'll have an AMA with them next week. So there'll be ample opportunity to bring that up with them.
And just to kind of clarify, through the at least the pro license in the scenarios that we'll submit and the format of submitting your results, you should be able to completely develop your agent and test and train within the kind of the software itself without requiring any third-party help. So just wanted to put that out there.
So is the focus of this purely on tactical execution, assuming mission orders have already been issued? Or is there a role here for the agent to make more strategic decisions, such as how to achieve like a political effect with military means? In other words, do we want the AI to play a tactical game, or do we want the AI to play a strategy game?
Yeah, so excellent discussion. I think where we are in this challenge, it will be tactical execution. I do think back to the previous question about, commander's intent or mission objectives, there will be for the scenarios written description of the objectives. And so how the system or human, how your approach thinks about using that, as a consideration. I will say this is a starting point for us. Tactical things like Matrix Command, rather complex set of environment and set of options to look at that tactical, to give folks the vision, is we very much would like to understand how this works at the operational echelon and potentially above. And so how do you make those strategic decisions, which then turns into a set of tactical actions, is something we very much are interested in pulling on, because that starts to get at that decision making that is much more than optimizing, platforms and logistics and things like that. So that just gives you a little peek of where we're going, but we are starting using this platform on the tactical side.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, looking for the next question. This might also be a question for Matrix, but given a single license, can more than one instance of command be run at a time?
Yeah, that's probably checking Matrix's licenses or a question for Matrix. I'd probably defer to that.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm going to cut in here. I'm David Schwartz. I'm also on the project. I happen to know the answer to that question. Unfortunately for right now, the answer is no. The way Matrix sets it up is you have to buy a license per every instance you are looking for. And since we're only giving out one license, you only have access to one instance at a time.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, David. From an international company, what about academic collaborations and teams with non-US citizens? Is it a problem with who we work with on it, or is it just for the prize money?
Yeah,
Dan, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who, I'll let Dan correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone who wants to participate is able to. It's just for the prize money, that's where the foreign considerations may come into play. So we'll hope to have more information on that soon.
And I guess one other thing I'd add to that, and, I'm kind of speaking on my lane here. So again, Team Afrl, fix me if I'm wrong. If I think if Lee and Jeff end up falling in love with your approach and the tech that you're bringing to the table, there's a lot of other mechanisms that can be explored for formalizing that relationship. And foremost probably being is like sort of first stands, cooperative research and development agreements, CRADAs. Don't let the somewhat artificial constraints of this particular competition keep you from getting engaged in this space.
Okay. How are we thinking about doing scoring for the different scenarios in terms of innovation or effectiveness? Is there going to be a binary, like you scored at 90%, you scored at 89%, 90% wins? Or is there like a flair, or like this is a really innovative approach, so we're going to give them 10 stars instead of 9?
Yeah, it's going to be a multifaceted kind of evaluation. We are asking for the short, I'll say white paper, but it's not a traditional white paper, short description of your approach so that we can assess the innovation, the creativity, what you're trying to get after in terms of the technology. And then there will be a component that kind of is a score, aggregate score against the scenarios that we're going to release. And so it's a combination. So, I could argue you might have a really cool, idea about how in general you can come up with an AI planner, and it scores marginally, that there'll be two kind of components to the evaluation, because we are looking for that innovation, and we are also looking at a way of quantitatively looking at it with respect to these scenarios. And like I said, our goal is to kind of have increasing complexity scenarios, to the idea that we can kind of pinpoint collectively where we think that the curve is in terms of what we can do today and where we want to push it in the future. So that, and there'll be more information on scoring as we get to the next phase.
Okay, excellent. For the next question, why Command as a baseline software for this challenge? Given that we just saw StarCraft 2, we've played OK Go, like there's a tremendous amount of video games out there. And as an avid gamer myself, why Command Modern Operations? Before this challenge, and we started discussing, I never heard of it, to be honest. And so
yeah. So I think it just comes down to we saw this as the equivalent for the Department of the Air Force of StarCraft, right? So StarCraft, we can take, like I think I said in my opening, there's some insights and we can push that, and there's a lot of momentum. But there's still this question of, what practically or theoretically is possible when we start focusing it more on an operational, realistic, or operational centered set of scenarios in game. And for us at the current time of thinking about this challenge, Command was that platform. Not to say it's the only, and it's not to say it would be the only in the future, but we see Command being the StarCraft, that first game for us to start looking at tactical planning and operational planning type problem sets.
Yeah, and I mean, we have military simulations that could most certainly be great platforms to do this on, but we're very limited in how those can be released. And so the fact that this is a commercial game made it very appealing to us, and we think opens that aperture to get the additional participation we were looking for.
Great, and it seems like a really cool game. I'm interested in buying the civilian version myself just to play on the weekends.
There's just one other thing I would add to that. So there was a significant operational level end user that already integrates this platform in their training. And I think for the longer term, like where this thing is going, it was important to be able to have a relevant end user set of customers that would be able to sort of see the validity, like sort of external validity to some extent of a proof of concept in the platform that was selected. So that was another consideration. Also, I'd actually been tracking this particular game from a few years before when I asked a colleague of mine at Rand, who I'd been working with for several years and was one of the more sort of talented operational thinkers, what he thought of out on the commercial market as being a particularly good game for getting a sense of how military operations run at kind of an operational level. This was the platform they pointed to.
Excellent. So this thing's going to be sticking around for a while. We're not going to build this and then next month command modern operations is going to be off the shelf. So this will be a lasting endeavor. So again, this is probably a question for Matrix, but so given that we have a limited number of pro licenses we can give out, and there's going to be teams who aren't able to purchase them, is there a way we can give them instructions about how to purchase those licenses themselves? Apparently, people are already looking on Matrix on their website, and they cannot seem to find that info. Again, we can probably ask Matrix that next week, but any advice for how to buy these if you know off the top of your head?
So if you do search for the Pro, I believe it's under the kind of government site on Matrix. I do think that's probably a quick follow-up that the NSIN Afrl team can do is to update with some instructions to make it a little bit easier. And of course we can talk to Matrix next week. But yeah, we could probably add some clarity to that. Good question.
Yeah, we'll take that for action. Jacob, maybe what we can do is we can add a direct link from the challenge landing page, and then perhaps also email blast anyone who's registered.
Okay. So we'll definitely.
Yeah, and there was a good question for those who have access to GSA. It does show up on GSA. So for those that can get to GSA.
So the most recent question that was just put in, the panelists keep referring to, quote, planning, which raises the question, does command allow real-time, step-by-step interaction of the AI agent during a scenario execution, i.e. feedback control, or does the AI have to provide an open loop plan of how to execute a scenario prior to execution?
So yeah, I think you're very much hitting on the difference between the commercial and the pro version. The commercial version is very much based on a scripting type interface, which is, I can imagine a scenario where you could probably generate a somewhat flexible Lua script that could play it effectively. I'd be interested to see how well you could do. But the pro version is what provides you the socket connection into Lua to do that control very specifically in real time.
Excellent. More questions about licenses. It seems a lot of these questions are going to be really pertinent to next week's AMA with Matrix, so they're very game specific. For example, can you give us more details about information available in the game? Will it be following information available with GPS? Shooting under different conditions? Again, these are very appropriate for Matrix. So here we go. Can you confirm the overall program structure? Will we need to submit a fully trained / complete system by the 5th of July, or is this the start of an ongoing process? Additionally, will the training scenarios be released prior to the 14th June registration deadline?
Yeah, so question one, we are anticipating to see how far folks can get in terms of submitting their I'll call it an agent, but their software package that can show that it's able to play against the 3 or 4 release scenarios, and then for us to be able to evaluate it on the 4th scenario. So we understand the kind of the challenge and the time, and that was kind of partly by design to kind of get people thinking and to kind of rally. So that's the goal, how far you can get. And that's also why we have that two-part. You're submitting a description of your innovation or your algorithm and your idea of how it works, and then an ability to kind of score, evaluate against the scenarios. The second question is, yes, we plan, like I said, to at least be able to release 1 or 2 of the scenario packages before the 14th, I believe it is. We definitely plan to get that mechanics, the one that will test the mechanics of the challenge and make in the game before the 14th. So that is our plan.
And I think it's a good plan, personally. I like it. Since we only have a few minutes left, so are there any other AFRL TDs part of this collaboration?
So in general, from the portfolio, the perspective, AFRL at large, we are moving towards how do we bring AI into the decision-making kind of portfolio area. So we are, where this challenge is being run, we are teaming with folks from human effectiveness on that human machine teaming and trust component. We have folks from our space vehicles looking at some of the space kind of scenarios from planning, as well as some of our modeling sim folks at other TDs and the like. So this is one piece of a much larger strategy to really accelerate and engage with industry of how we bring AI to decision making, to C2, to planning. So long answer to a short, what could be a short answer is yes, we are.
Got it. And then I think our final question before we wrap up, will submission be accepted if it's in binary form without open source disclosure?
I think so, but I think it'll be hard for binary form if we're thinking about the luau socket, luau scripts, but I don't think we are not requiring it to be open source, but we will need to figure out how to make sure that the right functions are being, the functions are being used, that we're not using side information to kind of Oracle information to kind of, potentially get any kind of unfair advantage or things like that. So I don't think we're requiring, it being open, but we'll have to work through that team to potentially make sure we understand what's going on. Okay,
excellent. Well, it seems we only have a few minutes left, so I wanted to go take a moment to thank you both for your time today. This has been pretty insightful. Again, we're going to have a second AMA coming next Monday at 1 o'clock. We will be sending out an email to all the registrants who register for this Eventbrite, as well as all the attendees here. So we'll give you that information for the next Eventbrite. Any final comments, thoughts, words of wisdom, pearls of advice you'd like to give the participants before they go off and make the new StarCraft 2?
I just thank you for your time. Like Jeff and I said, we're excited. We're looking for you to push the envelope, put your ideas out there, even if it means, you got a half working prototype or the first scenario. We really want to just build a community around this, and we're committed to pushing the envelope from the technology perspective. I do want to thank Ms. Haven Brown, David Schwartz, and Tiffany Lee. They are part of the AFRL team working hard behind the scenes, making all this work. So you'll be seeing them over the course of the next few months as well. So thank you all.
Yeah, and really the whole purpose of this challenge is to find people out there that have the ideas and have the drive to do something really cool. So everyone's interested in this. We've already received all sorts of great feedback and excitement about this. So that gives us a warm fuzzy that we're on the right path here, and we really look forward to where this is going to go in the future.
Exciting times. It's a great time to be a part of the Department of Defense. So again, thank you all. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and attention. We have recorded this AMA today, so we'll be sending that out in a follow-up email, again, with more information about dates, registration dates, and the follow-on AMA. Please come next week for more fun, and looking forward to seeing you all push the envelope. So again, thank you all for your time. We hope everybody has a great rest of your day.